it's time to sit back and relax with your favorite drink. And listen.
Fermi's Hourglass by Madutsuk in the Nexus. Well, looks like this is it. There's a sandstorm outside right now, and with only one of the battery packs still intact, I don't really have a whole hell of a lot of hope that I'm going to make it out of this one. A few solar panels that are still functional aren't even working at 1/10 of their capacity, so they're not resupplying energy anywhere near as quickly as the life support system's burning through it. Even with only me left here, the system's estimating that it'll take about 3 days for the power to run out, and then there'll be no air circulation. No circulation means that carbon dioxide is going to build up since the atmosphere can't reach the scrubbers, and I'll suffocate in the air that I exhale. Or, I would if I didn't have enough oxycodone in the medbay to kill a small elephant. Let's face it though, even if this storm's a short one, I'm not going to last long anyway. Water's not really a problem, and there's a little bit of food left, since Edmund's kept an emergency supply outside of the kitchen in case there was a crisis and we needed to wait for extraction. The only problem with that is that there's not going to be any extraction at this point. The lander was made for 4 people, so I can't operate it on my own. Even if I could, it would just get me up to the orbiter, which I haven't seen in weeks. I'm pretty sure that it collided with one of the dust bunnies up there above the atmosphere. So I'd like to use what little energy this place has left to send one last message. As best I can tell, no one on Earth's listening, so I've overridden the normal operating procedures for the antenna swivel and pointed it to Gliese 5b. I know we're not supposed to send signals out to planets that we think might be inhabited, but I don't see a problem with it just now. After that, I might take one last stroll around the base. Go to pet the dust bunny, maybe. It doesn't seem to mind, and it never does, then I'll say goodnight and check out on my own time. If anyone receives this message and actually knows how to read it, my name is Janet Dawson. I was the second human being to set foot on Mars, right after Edmonds and before Johnston, the fucking asshole who blew up our batteries. Sarah Edmonds was the head of Team 1, Carl Johnston and I were the team geologists, and Daniel Reed was our medical professional on site. Also, he was the first person to die on Mars, for what that's worth. Team 2 never got their chance to land, which they would have taken 3 months down the road had everything gone according to plan. The 4 of us had been working down here for a month when the news came in from NASA that Neptune was gone. News like that takes a minute to process, and we weren't sure at first whether it was a joke, or if there might have been some sort of miscommunication. Nope. The outermost ice giant in our solar system was just not there anymore. It had happened a week before, but the decision was made to censor our communications until they could come up with a way to let us know. Its moons had also vanished, the day after Neptune itself. In their place was a whole lot of nothing. The JAXA NASA orbiter at Uranus wasn't really made to look at things that distant, but they did try to turn it to see if there was anything noticeable that the telescopes in Earth orbit and the ones on the Deep Space Station around the moon might have missed. There wasn't. Obviously, people got a little concerned when they realized what had happened. It was virtually impossible to keep it secret for any length of time, though. Attempts were made to see if anything had happened to Kronos, the only planet further out than Neptune. But with its orbit out in the Kuiper Belt approaching Aphelion and its dark surface blending in with the space between stars, it can be hard to find even under normal circumstances. It didn't stop people from concluding that it was gone too, though. Real panic wasn't setting in yet, but there was a kind of unnameable terror. From what we could tell once we started getting uncensored news again, suicides went up globally. There was also a serious increase in terrorist attacks from apocalyptic fundamentalists. Someone even tried to set up a bomb in the basement of the Burj Jeddah. Well, they were stopped, but an attempt to level the world's second tallest building draws a lot of attention. And for about another week, that was it. Neptune continued to not exist. Scientists finally found Kronos again, along with the other known large Kuiper Belt objects, so there was some relief. Maybe this wasn't as dangerous as it seemed. Holy shit, did it seem dangerous. And then, Uranus disappeared. With the disappearance of the second planet, we were told immediately. I guess Mission Control decided that hiding what happened was pointless, since we'd have to find out sooner or later. What they didn't tell us until later in the day was that, this time, there had been photographs. A satellite in orbit around the planet managed to send back 3 full-color digital images before it lost contact with Earth, and all of them were horrifying. In all 3, you could see columns of pale blue clouds rising from Uranus's atmosphere and then curling into spirals. It looked like there were hundreds of those, kind of like waterfalls but in reverse. The last photo returned was taken close to one, with the end of its spiral silhouetted against the darkness of space. Toward the end, the pale blue turned to tan, and at the end of the column, there was an almost imperceptibly small dot, like a grain of sand. Martial law was declared in pretty much every country that could enforce it. This time the reaction wasn't unspoken fear, but instead was raw terror. Whatever was out there was eating worlds, and it was on its way toward the Earth. States without the capability relied on UN or regional peacekeepers, but that really wasn't enough. The result was civil war. Not war with any real goal, just the reaction of people trapped with nowhere to run. Where the police and military could stop the riots before they got that bad, they used first batons, then tear gas and beanbag shotguns, and then, finally, machine gun fire. Death tolls globally escalated into the thousands. We were offered the option of going back to Earth. It was late evening here in the Eridania lakebed, and we sat around the aluminum table in the dining room, discussing the pros and cons of heading up to the orbiting command module and then leaving for home. Families, friends, all those people we had left behind. But we all knew the unfortunate truth, and Edmonds was the first person to voice it. If whatever this was got from Neptune to Uranus in 2 weeks, then leaving the surface just meant that we would die floating through the empty sky. Any chance of returning to our loved ones was already gone. That wasn't our stated reason, of course. We said that we wanted to continue the mission, to keep hope alive. And who knew? Maybe Uranus would be the last planet they consumed. It wasn't. The dream started too, on the day when they ate Saturn, before we realized what had happened. Enormous voids opened up in our minds and filled themselves with green and black fractal patterns. Time didn't move as it should have. The immense scale of both time and space in that place was disconcerting, and the first night it felt like I'd spent years asleep. I remember waking up groggy and still uneasy, getting back some cheap knockoff coffee from the kitchen, and moving to the main room to sit down and read any messages that might have come in on my tablet. Daniel walked in, told me that I looked like shit, and then asked with a note of concern whether I had any unusual dreams. I thought at first it was just he was worried about my mental state because, yeah, I looked pretty much like shit. And then it dawned on me. The look on his pale, tired face was something else entirely. After we realized that we all had the same dream, we got into the stimulant stash and started popping modafinil like candy. We were wired up like Christmas lights in hell by the time we got the call to let us know what had happened to Saturn. It took the things a little over an hour to eat Saturn, and this time it was visible through near real-time streaming thanks to the powerful telescopes at the Deep Space Station. Its rings were gone too quickly to see what happened to them, but the world itself died slowly. The columns curled out from the planet, first smooth like the ones photographed at Uranus, then developing a stranger texture as material from the depths of the gas giant started to dredge up. Freed from the pressure in the world's depths, they exploded outward, then collapsed in again as they turned from their own strange colors back to something almost like the long-vanished outer atmosphere. In orbit around Saturn, the ESA's Herschel probe and NASA's own Saturn Next also returned images before dying. Saturn Next didn't really get anything better than the photos from the Uranus orbiter, but its eccentric orbit gave it nearly 10 minutes of time to see what was going on. Herschel, on the other hand, returned only one photo, but it was worth 1,000 from a greater distance. At the end of a long, curving tendril of planetary material was the first dust bunny that any human being ever saw close up. It really did look like a kind of rabbit made of sand, hence the name, given to them by yours truly, after the shit hit the fan and I was alone to call them whatever the hell I wanted. Of course, it was really more of a blob, but it had 2 long, floppy ears, noticeable even in the grainy, pixelated image. At the time, we weren't sure whether those were just a brief shape that the object took on, although I can now assure you that they're permanent. In person, it's actually kind of cute. Well, kind of like someone tried to make a Shoggoth look cute, but you can take what you can get. They settle down when they're on a planet, but in orbit they just flop around as the bunny moves. I might have started mixing the modafinil in some other stimulants with the painkillers I mentioned earlier. Hey, don't judge me. After those images came back, martial law pretty much went to shit. People started to desert from the military in droves, just wanting to see their families, and chaos took over. At that point, I'm pretty sure that people back home were having the dreams too. It's hard to say with the attempts at media censorship, but between the news anchors trying to fake optimism while still saying goodbye, there were a few hints. A news anchor who had to be escorted off set because she couldn't stop crying. A rioter with a revolver, wearing a hooded sweater and firing up into the sky before he turned it on himself and screamed that they would never take him. A brief image of a woman in a crowd who looked like she fell asleep on her feet for a moment, then woke up with an expression that I'd never seen before in my life. It took maybe 2 days for society to begin to collapse. We all called home that night to leave a message for our loved ones because of an unexpected communications shutdown. Well, except for me. I didn't really have anyone to talk to. An ex-husband, yes, but no one else since my family died years ago when Mega Typhoon Dim hit their vacation home in Okinawa, and I made the executive decision not to let what was almost certainly going to be one of my last days go to waste trying to contact that asshat. Well, it took a while for it to sink in that my life was now probably going to be measured in days or weeks at the most. But the life of the entire human race wouldn't go on for much longer. Even with stimulants, you can't stay awake forever, and as soon as the communications cut off, almost immediately after Daniel sent his last message to his wife and daughter in Tallahassee, now that I think about it, we all went back to bed. Somehow I think we knew that everything would change after that, and that maybe we'd be ready for it if we experienced it together instead of alone, when we could no longer avoid the inevitable. Well, we weren't so lucky. The dreams did come back, except now they felt even longer, even more hopeless and lonely. Being together in that green and black darkness is impossible. It took us all about 2 hours to wake up from our dreams, but I was honestly confused about where I was. My memories were foggy, like the moment when I closed my eyes had happened a decade or more ago. Well, none of us spoke about it. Really, we didn't speak much to each other at all when we woke up at roughly the same time. I did the only thing that I knew to do. Went to the damned lab and stared at rocks for hours like I was still working, even though all communication had been severed not long before. The lack of sleep combined with the potent pharmaceuticals helped with that. The sun was going down and the sky was stained pale blue when I heard Johnston start screaming. He was in the main room, howling in terror and anger. For a while I thought about just staying in the lab, but then it hit me that helping someone in obvious distress was just the humane thing to do. Still, I didn't exactly run up to see what was up, because I was sure that it was going to be bad. My intuition wasn't off. It was really fucking terrible. There was a hell of a lot of blood, and that was the first thing I noticed. The couch was covered with it, and the green and yellow carpet was stained red. Johnston was busy ripping the television off of the wall when I first turned the corner. It only took him a second to get it down, and then he picked his kitchen knife back up off the floor. There wasn't really a lot of clothing left on him at that point, just his pants and the tattered remains of his shirt. Under that shirt, there really wasn't a lot of skin left either. Honestly, I can't know what he saw. I think he drifted off to sleep on the couch, and if he did at that point, who knows what he went through. It's hard not to judge him after everything, but the look on his face was just raw terror. His eyes were huge, his mouth hanging open, his cheeks stained with both his own blood and the tracks of tears. "They did it," he said. "Oh, fuck. They got Jupiter. I watched them do it. Watched them eat it. Can you just imagine being in one of those columns? Damn it, I saw it. Katie, I saw it. The ridges of the clouds Katie, holy fuck, Katie." Johnston's daughter was named Katie. I remember that. She's about my age, even though he didn't look old enough to have a daughter who was nearly in middle age herself. "Johnston, there's no way you could know that," I told him, a desperate lie. "There's no news coming in. We watched the line cut off together. How could you know what you just said was true?" "Katie," he said again and again. Katie, oh my God. They're not even going to kill us, Katie. It's only going to take a little while now, and they're going to be here in Long Beach. And they're going to take us up. God, it's hell in there." I think that I made a move forward, my arms outstretched. I'm not sure if I actually took a step, though. That kitchen knife, dulled nearly black with Johnston's blood, moved up to his neck. If nothing had happened, I'm pretty sure he would have just cut through. Unfortunately for everyone, Daniel chose that moment to arrive from the opposite end of the base, coming out of the corridor and into the main room right beside him. He had time to say something. Maybe, "What the hell?" Johnson stabbed through Daniel's chest in one fast move, his knife going through the doctor's sternum. The two were locked together for an instant that lasted forever, almost like a hug. Someone was screaming, but it wasn't either of them. Well, it had to be me, but I don't feel like I was really there at that moment. The two crumpled to the floor, and I remember sobbing. That noise, I know, it wasn't coming from me. Almost definitely it was Johnston. Daniel was already unconscious. The precious fluid that kept his body moving was leaking onto the floor in a puddle. Edmonds came in from the same direction as Daniel, running into the room. She gave a confused, horrified glance around before Johnston shoved her out of the way and ran down the hall. He was screaming again now, running faster than someone in his physical state had any right to go, treading blood and flesh like breadcrumbs. Neither of us was really sure what to do. We stared in horror down the hallway as he ran toward the storage rooms, maintenance, and the airlock. Then Edmonds broke the silence. "We need the gun." Well, firing a weapon in a sealed tube in near vacuum is always a risky prospect, but being unarmed is also horrifying. The idea of someone completely losing it on a 2-year, 8-person mission to Mars had been discussed, and eventually it was decided that a specially designed compressed air firearm, deliberately set up to kill or incapacitate a human, but to be too weak to easily puncture through the entire outer shell of the facility, was pretty much a necessity in case all other means failed, or the person managed to arm him or herself after the breakdown. There was no guarantee that it would kill or that it wouldn't absolutely punch a hole, but it would definitely stop someone who needed to be stopped. Now, Edmonds and I were running down the hallway to the right of the main room, toward the dormitory and the locked box under the captain's bunk where she kept the pistol. We got to her private room, and she pulled out the small grey metal case and started fumbling with her keyring. The whole time I stood at the door, looking back through the 15 feet between where we were and the main room in case Johnston decided to wheel around and come back. She had the box open, had pulled the pistol and ammunition out from their egg crate packaging, was putting the bullets into the chamber when we heard the explosion and the lights went out. Well, the Mars base is damn small. It only took Johnston a few minutes to get to the maintenance room, about the same time that it took us to get to the captain's quarters. There were a few controls in place to keep someone from accidentally damaging the main batteries, those enormous black rectangles lined up in a deep closet off from the maintenance room. What Johnston did was not accidental. I can't really tell you much about the chemistry of the batteries here, but I assume that they contained something that didn't play nice with oxygen. I also can't tell you what Johnston saw when he closed his eyes in the main room. But whatever it was, he couldn't get it out of his head until he punched a hole in one of those electrical monoliths with something. Not the knife, it was still in the main room, lodged in Daniel's chest. The maintenance room was wiped out entirely by the blast. It was a minor miracle that the backup battery in the lander, located off to the left of the main room and only around 30 feet away from maintenance, survived. It didn't even have to kick off to seal maintenance off from the rest of the base, because the emergency hatches in the base have their own backup supply, but we wouldn't have been able to leave the dormitory if it hadn't. All of the safety seals had locked tight in a fraction of a second, and they needed that power supply to function. As soon as the shock wore off, and as soon as the red emergency lights kicked on so that we weren't relying entirely on light streaming in from the narrow windows, Edmonds finished loading the gun. She looked at me and asked, "Do you really think that's what it sounded like?" Well, I nodded. There really wasn't a lot else it could have been. We still took the gun with us on our way toward maintenance. The sealed hallway leading to the main room required an approval code to open, and it took us more than a minute to figure it out through trial and error, inputting all of the codes that we never expected to use. Then the door that actually opened into the main room needed the same. All of them required the same code, though. This time it just took long enough for Edmonds to enter the password with her free hand shaking violently. The main room looked like something out of a horror movie. The television sat propped up against the love seat, its screen broken. The adjacent couch was ripped to shreds. The sheer volume of blood was worse than I'd remembered. It was hard to tell in the harsh red light where the blood ended and the normal color of the carpet began. I walked over to Daniel's body and checked briefly for a pulse, the thought occurring to me that we should have done that before running to get the gun. Oh well. There wasn't one, and there had been no reason to think that there should have been, only a few minutes earlier. A few minutes that felt like an eternity, but still only a few minutes. The hatch leading to the maintenance corridor was firmly closed, and the readout on its panel showed that the atmosphere on the other side was dangerously thin. It'd be about 2 hours before we'd be able to go outside and check to make sure of what we already knew, and when we did, we found that the maintenance room was pretty much gone. There were pieces left from Johnston's body, and they stood out harshly in the darkness of the Martian light, silhouetted by our circles of artificial light. High above, where Jupiter should have been, there was only the yawning blackness of the Milky Way abyss. We weren't able to bury Daniel, but we took him out there onto the surface, wrapped in a funeral shroud made from a bedsheet. It was all that we could do. In the eternal silence and cold of the dead world we'd come to explore, Edmonds told me goodbye. I didn't have time to react before she took off her helmet and rapidly fell to the ground. I could probably have taken her back into the base. Could probably have kept her alive. I didn't, though, because there was no point. Later on, I brought a shroud out for her too, along with the useless gun. Edmonds hadn't trusted it to end her life if she fired it, and neither did I. More likely it would just break bones and cause pain if someone tried to swallow it. The orbiter did a flyover of the base only once every few days. On its next pass, I made contact using the local antenna. Apparently, they'd also had a catastrophe. Team 2 was composed of Margaret Green, Tommy Whitefield, Brandon Densmore, and Tracy Lee when we set out from Earth. Now, Margaret Green was gone. She'd died in her sleep, the victim of a heart attack. The others had given her a similar funeral to the one we'd given Daniel, evacuating her body through the airlock. The whole process had been a mess, with her corpse getting snagged on the rim of the hatch on her way out. An EVA had to be carried out to free her body and let it drift, revealing that her lower arm had been nearly severed by the sharp metal of the hatch. That last jar sent it free, and then she went into orbit around Mars in 2 pieces. None of the others spoke openly about joining her outside of the ship, but it was pretty obvious what was coming. We talked for a while. Had the orbiter's stronger antenna picked up any signals from Earth? Yes, but nothing strong or directed. Nothing that could be really useful. A few words in Arabic, maybe, unintelligible to the crew and broken up by radio static. Had they seen whether Jupiter might still somehow be there? No, it was gone. The ship passed over the horizon, and then, forever, it was gone. Eventually, I fell asleep at the pile of communications equipment in the dormitory. In that red-tinged darkness, I dreamed about my childhood in Detroit, about the sunrise over the lake, about long winters with heavy snow, and about hot chocolate with my mother. Warm drinks from a ceramic mug and tiny little marshmallows. My first dog, her life and her death all too soon. About something that wasn't a dog and wasn't a cat, but looked a little like both. Something that looked at me with an expression that wasn't even close to human, from a face nearly a foot long and far too large for its small frame, with black pits instead of eyes, but that was still somehow pitiable and apologetic. It had 5 tails, ending with vast fans of digits, and they all hung down to the ground. The thing slid toward me like something somewhere between a cat and a weasel, and rubbed against my legs in a way that felt distinctly feline. Not purring, but making a rapid clicking sound. A sound I could understand, that I knew was coming across vast gulfs not only of space but of time, from something that had been dead for years when the dinosaurs first walked the earth, born in the light of a sun that had burnt out before ours began to shine. It was saying that things were never meant to end this way for us, that mistakes had been made, that it and the others of its kind, if they really were others in the proper sense, this creature seemed to be only part of a vast whole. Well, they were sorry. I'm not sure how long I slept. I could have checked, but if it's not obvious, I've completely lost track of time, and so that wouldn't even have been very useful. Maybe more than a day. What woke me, though, was more important. Outside, something thudded to the ground. I thought that maybe it was the lander, toppled over somehow from its vertical position. It only took a minute and a quick glance out the high window above the communications equipment to see how wrong I was. There's no way to know why the enormous thing outside of the base decided to stop here. I can't even begin to guess what it came here for. Like an amoeba made of dirt, with rabbit ears dangling down its side, it sat there pulsating. In the distance, I could see others falling from the sky like strange hailstorm. From its base, I watched roots extend out from the dust bunny. They burrowed into the red dirt, and the thing began to make a rapid clicking noise, similar to the animal that had visited my dream, but at a radically different pitch. I made a few trips out to see it, carefully bypassing where Daniel and Edmonds lay still on the Martian ground. Whatever it and its brethren are, they stopped here on Mars. I can't say whether more went on to land on Earth, but at night I can still see the Earth and its moon. Neither is broadcasting now. Phobos and Deimos are still up there, and looking at them through the telescope in the lab, I can see tiny brown dots on both. In the dark, the blobs glow faintly blue, both here and on the night side of the moons. There's almost no chance that I'm the last human being left, but I doubt that there's any chance that humanity will bounce back from this. With the outer planets gone, it's hard to say what exactly is going to happen in the future. But I do know that I won't be alive to see it. No one's coming here for me. I'm alone, and I'm going to die. So, consider this a warning and a goodbye. If this happens to you, maybe you'll fare better. And if not, who knows? I have a feeling now that there's a sort of life after death, even if it isn't the kind that we used to expect. Maybe I'll see you on the other side.
It started when we called out to the stars, into the darkness. We felt so small, tumbling through the vast emptiness, while clinging to the skin of the world, and without a single reason why. We were curious, yes, but ultimately I think we were just terribly frightened. And we were young, so very young. We were children, and like a lonely lost child, we did the only thing we could think of to make it stop. We did what we thought we had to do to make the universe make sense. We called for help. For years we scanned the sky for a sign. We sent signals to the stars in the darkness beyond. Are we alone? But the skies were quiet. Always so quiet, leaving us to our own makings. But crying children never cease, and neither did we. We sent calls into every corner of space for decade after decade. We refused to believe that no one was out there. They had to be, yet, for some unknown reason, they never answered us. Everyone remembers when that changed. They think it responded to the Arecibo message from 1974. The response to the Arecibo message was received almost 3 months ago in 2 separate parts. The first part of the message was received at the Hat Creek Radio Observatory in California. The Allen telescope array picked up what sounded like static interference that continued on for over an hour. It consisted of unintelligible screeching and buzzing sounds that continued without pause for the whole hour. The meaning of this message was never discovered, if it had one. The only thing we knew was that the signal's origin came somewhere in the Hercules constellation, near Messier 13. As soon as that signal stopped, the real message began. We made contact that day, and we were asked a question. Who is there? It came not through the radios, but as a voice inside all of our heads, asked the question to all of us. I heard it. My wife heard it. The young heard it, and the old heard it. Even the deaf heard it. Everyone, everywhere, heard this voice whisper that question in their heads, in every language on earth. I remember it almost too clearly. It asked in that familiar, yet indescribable voice that's always there in my mind. It was like one of my own thoughts had gone rogue and had decided to speak directly to me. The world seemed to stop as everyone listened for what came next. Where are you? The heavy question seemed to linger in our minds for hours afterwards, and then for days, and then for weeks. That day changed everything. There were the doubters from the very beginning, and the holy ones who claimed that God had spoken to all of us, and that the time to repent was now. There were those who claimed they'd heard nothing, and those who'd claimed that the aliens had given them their own secret messages. And, of course, there were those who truly believed that we had been contacted for the first time by an extraterrestrial race like us, one ready to communicate, ready to lead us out of the dark. We were wrong. We never made contact with alien life, at least nothing comprehensible or discernible to human understanding. The stars are vast, and in their vastness our voices had touched the ears of something truly incomprehensible, something hungry and malevolent. The voice. We realized our mistake when the ground started to groan. Beneath our feet, everywhere, the ground seemed to moan. The muffled sound shook through the dust and dirt below us. No one knew what was causing it, at least not until the calls started coming in. The graveyards were screaming. All at once, the dead had started screaming. Every deceased man, woman, and child was turning in their graves. All the animals did too. Every dog, every cat, everything that had ever walked this earth. The cries of ancient whales shook the seas, and the shrill of shrieking birds echoed in the forests. The caskets shook, and the morgues howled. The voices stopped altogether, in an instant leaving the world in an amplified silence. In their absence, a new sound filled the air. The voice returned. I hear you. It came as a whisper from behind, an ominous, yet oddly playful presence that felt so close, but was truly still so far away. It let us breathe in the silence for a minute before it made us a promise. It was a promise we all knew to be true. I am coming. The voice was gone, and the air was again filled with screams. This time, they were from the living. After the voice had gone, we were left to our own devices. Millions panicked, and rightfully so, as chaos took hold of the streets. Many would die in the violence and the gunfire of that night. They would be known as the raptured before long, and the rest of us were the condemned. We could only wait. The screaming dead was only the first of the side effects that we felt as the voice approached. The closer it got, the more we felt it. That first night after the screaming, we noticed the stars bleed for the first time. A section of the western sky had turned black, blacker than the night. It was only truly visible because of the ring of stars around it. The light from those stars had turned red, and they seemed to bleed across the sky like food coloring dropped into water. Their light swirled and flowed all around the edge of some unseen mass. I knew then that I was staring into the face of the voice. Our scientists claimed that nothing was there, and that their radar and scans always came up empty. Their telescopes could see nothing but darkness in that section of space. However, the proof was right in front of us, as every night that ring of darkness got wider, and more stars bled in the sky. We watched it come. As each night passed, the black spot would widen, and more stars would distort and bleed around it. During the day, a new hell would greet us. The side effects worsened. The day always brought something new. I'm sure most of what happened will go untold and unknown. The animals started disappearing. All of them. No tracks, traces, or bodies were left behind. Pets would run away, some violently so. They all retreated, never to be seen again. The forests were left abandoned, the oceans empty. The air was left silent. The world left seemed empty and lonely. They left like water receding from the shore just before the tsunami breaks. One day, about 2 weeks ago, scientists tried to talk to the voice again. They hoped, perhaps, to reason with it. They told it about what was happening on our world and asked it questions. The scientists begged. It didn't speak. When asked what, the voice sent a response. The next night, the skies lit up with streaks of fire. It was alight for hours, blazoned with orange and red. We didn't realize the effects until the next day, when the televisions turned to static and the telephones refused to work. We had sat watching as all the satellites were knocked out of the heavens. After that, reports became rumors and rumblings. Sanity a thing of the past. The air chilled and weighed us down. The voice was nearly here, and everyone felt it. It rained for a week after the satellites fell. The rain was salty and mired with an unknown filth that turned the grass black. Maybe the satellites tracked something back in with them when they hit the sky. No one knew for sure. All we know is that it fell from clouds black as charcoal that blotted out the sun like liquid ash. Darkness fell upon us for days. When the clouds went away, the skies were empty. There were no clouds, yet the sky hung low and grey. If the sun was anywhere in the sky, it never made itself known, as if it had abandoned us. Each day grew slowly darker and darker, until night and day became almost the same. Some people would claim later that they'd seen things in the dark, creatures with gangly limbs and crooked faces, lurking in the corner of their vision. They were tall, white creatures that looked molted or rotten through their transparent skin. Appearances would last for just a second or two before vanishing without a trace. Some believed this was the first step in an alien invasion, but the rest of us didn't know what to think. We just knew that it was nothing that simple or benign. They must have been hallucinations, just more madness to endure, but ultimately as harmless as anything else. As harmless as the screams of the dead, the missing animals, and the dying sky. Appearances slowly increased in duration and number. I think everyone saw them once at least, but I don't think a single person would ever guess why they were truly here. They never touched nor spoke to anyone, and they certainly never harmed anyone. Most who got good looks at them described them as mournful or sorrowful looking. Some even claimed the creatures watched over them at night, and others even claimed that it seemed as if the creatures were sorry for them. One claimed to have even seen one prostrate upon the ground, hands clasped above its head. He said it was praying for us. Prayer was no help. The churches and places of worship that had divided us for so long failed to bring hope to any in the end. The voice let them pray and beg for a while, but just days ago, the voice ended it all. No one questioned how, for at this point nothing that happened surprised anyone anymore. But on the final day, all books of worship burned. Every last Bible, every Quran, everything. People rushed to their centers of faith, but found no solace. The churches and temples had suffered the same fates, if not worse. The people were left, abandoned by their greatest hopes. There were rumors of churches all over the world, with walls formed from the bodies of those who sought refuge. They were merged to the walls, stuck to them like flies in a trap. They died, still pleading for hope, but they were beyond God's help. The rest of us had learned to stop begging. We waited. The final message came. From beyond the sky, it fell upon us. The voice echoed, and it spoke the simple truth. I am here. There is a darkness beyond the horizon, the likes of which I doubt has ever been seen. It brings with it the screams of countless souls, and it moves fast. The stars are dying now, and I know they'll never be seen again. The light is dying so fast. I leave this not as a warning. No, it's far too late for that. Instead, consider this the last realization, the last humanity will ever know. For we used to wonder whether or not we were alone and lost, but never whether or not we were safe and hidden. The universe is infinite, and our understanding was significantly more finite. We should never have beckoned to the darkness. Instead, we should have clung to the light and closed our eyes every time we were turned to the void. As the final minutes approach, I hold one final truth to be certain. I now know why the skies were always so quiet.
So, my dear friends, these are the stories that honestly terrify me the most. The ones about cosmic horror, where something can just come along and wipe away everything we ever have, everything we've known, everything we've built as a civilization in the blink of an eye. Because basically, well, who's to say it couldn't just happen tomorrow? Well, yeah, so, terrifying stories from my perspective. Now, hopefully you can see a little bit of a difference between those two stories. That's one that I recorded yesterday, the first one. And the second one was one that I did back in 2016 when I was new to this storytelling game. So hopefully you can tell the difference, and hopefully you appreciate my style in the first one more than in the second. Well, anyway, if not, I'll go back to being very dramatic and reading like this. No, I don't think I could do it, to be honest with you. Anyway, that's enough for me this evening. Back again tomorrow night with a new episode of the podcast. Till then, my dear friends, very, very sweet dreams, and bye-bye.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. Really means a lot to me and to the author of the story, of course. Well, if you want to know more about me, I'm pretty much everywhere on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can download my music on SoundCloud. I've got a Patreon if you feel like. Throw me $1 or $2. Very much appreciated. And of course, on Reddit, I have a place where you can leave stories if you want me to read one that you've written. Well, hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams. Bye-bye.